something, go local columnist Bob Whitcomb.
Hello.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
These weeks just fly by, don't they?
Yeah, when you're heavily medicated.
Or really hot.
That's
'Cause
right. Yeah, it's right. I like it.
Super hot out. You like the
I
heat?
like it. It's very degenerate, yeah. I even like Florida in the summer. It's much better than the winter.
You're a little masochistic, are you?
No, I think, old age and, you're cold all the time.
Yeah.
Next time I'm going to come over with wearing an autumn haze mink coat. Okay, when it gets up
We've
to
got the AC
105.
cranking in here because there's just so much going on, and
I was about to burn the furniture to keep warm. If I could find any. Right.
burning the
None of
furniture.
it's made out of wood, though. That's the trouble.
Oh yeah, it's all synthetic materials.
Yeah,
You don't really want to. You
synthetic.
don't
No,
want to
we'd
burn
be-
the
We'd be
furniture.
poisoned. We'd be poisoned.
So you've got, as we always do, your notes. I've got my notes. Kind of want to look at your last column. Can we start maybe with a couple things from there?
Sure.
One of the interesting things you mentioned in your last column, looking at the most recent issue with the city council with council
Right.
president Luis Aponte. Did you get a lot of feedback for that? Bob said maybe the city needs to pay its city council.
I think so. They pay them about 15 grand a year, which is awfully little for a job that takes a lot of time. The reason it takes a lot of time is the constituents are always complaining. They want the potholes fixed. It takes a lot of time. This isn't justifying embezzlement and that kind of thing. But I think we should remember most city councilors are quite poor. Most of Providence is quite poor. You drive through College Hill on the east side and everything looks hunky-dory, but most of the city's not like that. Most of it's people of color and relatively impoverished. And even that $15,000 salary means a lot. That's one reason I think Kevin Jackson, who was ousted in the recall election, held on to his job, and that's one reason I think the council president, Luis Aponte, is hanging on to his job.
And what do you think about that?
$15,000 a year, but that's $15,000 a year he otherwise wouldn't have.
So, there's sort of two tracks.
Yeah.
There's obviously the legal track that both of them have
Yeah.
gone through and are going through, and then there's the political one as well. We saw Kevin Jackson, before he was ultimately recalled,
Yeah.
first step down from the majority leader position, from
Right.
his positions of leadership on the council, but remain on the council.
Yeah.
We've seen the same thing with Luis Aponte. Now, there was the vote of no confidence
Yeah.
from fellow council members. He said he's going to stay on.
As president, I believe, as council president.
council
Even though I
president.
suppose they could oust him. I haven't heard anything new about that. But I mean, they're clearly embarrassed to have him there. They wish he would go away.
Well, would it
which is
have to-
unfortunate too, because he's actually quite smart.
Would it have to go the same route, though, as a Kevin Jackson?
Yeah.
Would it have to go to a recall for his district?
I think so. Which gets to the public policy issue. Why isn't there an ordinance permitting ththese people either step aside or force them to resign if they're under indictment, under criminal indictment? I'm not talking about parking tickets. At least to step aside. Apparently there's no ordinance.
So you think even
Why?
though they have not been found guilty in a court of law, you think
Step aside.
just
Step aside.
for the
Right.
time? Well, you say
That's
step
right.
aside. So does
Yeah.
that mean
Yeah.
for the
Not
time
necessarily
being?
resign, not
Okay.
necessarily resign, but step aside, some kind of proviso in which they would not have the ability to vote.
So let
for
your
example.
legal kind of issues work out
Right,
and to see
yeah.
how that transpires.
And have
at
no
which point-
voting power.
Okay.
No voting power. So I like to call it step aside. There are ordinances, laws in some states and cities which encourage that, to take that approach. That makes a lot of sense to me. There should be a state law in Rhode Island and other states mandating that for the municipalities. And in case people don't realize this, the cities and towns are legal children of the state, so the state can pass a law ordering Providence to have an ordinance.
Do you think because of what we see at the council, I mean, you're clearly not the first person to bring something like this
Yeah.
up.
Oh,
Do you think
sure.
we'll see any traction
It's
for
happened
something?
before, I have to say. It's happened before here and many other places. Yeah.
Do you think we'll see any traction with other councilors calling for such a measure?
I think so. I know the mayor, I don't know how much respect they have for the mayor, but the mayor has said something to that effect. I think he mentioned enacting an ordinance, which you can't do it ex post facto, so
No.
that would not have covered Mr. Jackson or Mr. Aponte, but, going forward, it certainly is something that should have been done a long time ago. I was rather surprised there wasn't any, provision like that already.
Well,
Frankly,
we'll watch and see what happens.
Yeah.
It was interesting because the mayor did say
Yeah.
that they were going to try to render the council president somewhat powerless. But again, there's nothing
Yeah.
in place to impact that. at
The
this
other
time.
thing, obviously, we always have to bear in mind, they are not technically, they are legally innocent until proven guilty, and we should certainly bear that in mind. But just in terms of the efficiency, the practicality, the dignity of the council and of other organizations like that, other governmental bodies like that, it would be best if they were off to the side, no voting when this thing goes on, because it is about political corruption. And they are in a political/public policy job, so.
So how
Get
much
them
do you
out
think
of
they should
there.
pay them?
I'd say $25,000 a year, a bit more, about $10,000 more than they're getting. I know everybody will complain about my saying this, saying, you would be encouraging, you're ignoring bad behavior if in fact they engaged in it. And I expect they engaged in at least some bad behavior. We may not know all of it. But say they engaged in bad behavior, but that's sort of another point. That's really another issue from which you should pay legislators like this at the state and local level. I think they're underpaid for the amount of time they have to spend on these jobs, and I know what these people do. It's a lot of work, phone calls in the middle of the night. It's endless.
No, absolutely. So we'll continue to keep an eye on the council.
I'd like to announce my candidacy, by the way, for the city council.
Bob Whitcomb, running.
I'm going to run in the Druid Party.
Yeah, I know you're joking
Yeah.
about coming in here and making news, but don't let people, don't give them false hope, Bob.
All is possible these days, as we've proven in Washington and every other place.
All
in
is
America.
possible. One of the conversations we just had in the green room just now, your thoughts on the potential future of President Trump?
Well, I'd say, the future is unknowable. As Yogi Berra said, I make no predictions. I never dare make predictions, especially about the future. But I'd say there's I'll do it anyway. 30% chance it'll be President Pence by the end of the year.
Well, there must be odds.
Yeah.
London bookmakers must have.
Vegas is going nonstop on this. I think there is this sort of unraveling now with Robert Mueller being named the special counsel, and a special counsel in a situation like this can then tell the deputy attorney general who's actually running this case to submit this stuff to a grand jury. If there is probable cause to believe that criminal acts have been committed, federal criminal acts have been committed. So I think anything could come out of this. You could even have something as crazy as Mr. Mueller may discover bad behavior by the Clinton campaign in the process of going through all of this. We forget that the incredibly revolting Monica Lewinsky case, the sex scandal involving President Clinton, that came out of an investigation of something else. A real estate deal. Here we go with real estate again. Back in Arkansas, this sort of seedy town, the seedy area in Arkansas. So, who knows what it'll come up with? But I think there's a pretty good chance it's going to come up with something, not a direct bribe, which that conversation that's been very sensationalist today. House Speaker Ryan and his majority leader saying. Mr. McCarthy, Congressman McCarthy saying Putin is paying Trump, and Rohrabacher, who's a very right-wing California congressman, paying them. I kind of doubt they're paying, that they're paid direct bribes. I think the central issue is really debt, loans, these relationships, and investments in the Trump organization. I think that's the money trail.
We see, such opposition to the president and in certain circles, in Democratic circles.
Sure.
What would folks think about President Pence?
Well, I think most people would say President Pence, by all accounts, is not insane. So I think some people would think that would be a big step up. That would just be relatively sane. He's very rigid. He's a very rigid, I believe, evangelical Christian, and very rigid right-wing. He would be seen very right-wing. While Trump, a lot of the Democrats maybe even more distressed for President Pence, because Trump really doesn't have any philosophy other than having President Trump, being in the middle of everything. So I think they would probably be pretty mortified by President Pence too. They would be at least as angry but less anxious, because President Pence would be, instead of President Trump, would be next to the codes, for the nukes and the missiles and all that stuff.
The nuclear codes, and of course North Korea keeps threatening. They've got
That's
that
right.
warhead.
They've got that. It's heading right for Quonset Point. That'll be an aid to navigation. So I think there's sort of that overused word, schizophrenic attitude. I think they fear President Pence because he'd be able to get along better with Congress because most of the Republicans in Congress really like him, so there'd be much more of a block. At the same time, he's much more rigid than Trump. He won't change every 15 minutes with a mood disorder, anything like that. It's very, very different. You've seen them both speak. I mean, Pence is very calm. In fact, he beat Tim Kaine in the debate, my belief, from a technical standpoint. He didn't lose his cool. He's got that nice white hair. He's sort of a passive.
A little bit of a helmet head.
Yeah, kind of a helmet.
That's a
And he's sort of maybe it's a wig, I don't know, or implants, but I think we should all investigate a piece of the implant crisis that's sweeping Washington.
Look at the Vice President Pence's hair.
Yeah,
Are you going to be writing anything on Trump for this weekend?
Yeah, a few ruminations on this stuff. One thing I wanted to mention, it's crazy, there's a Rhode Island State Rep called Canario has come up with a bill to try to stop people from going too fast in the left, no, going too slowly.
Yes, if they're not passing someone, if they're not passing.
Yeah, if they're not passing, I think he's sort of missing the point. This is ridiculous overregulation. The real problem I wrote is people speeding by on the right and not signaling, and then going diagonally without, including police cars, which I see all the time. They don't signal. And it's far more dangerous than someone speeding on the, that's the most dangerous thing is being passed at a high rate of speed on your right.
Oh, absolutely,
Really.
because you're not expecting it.
And he didn't say anything about that. And
No.
I see this all the time. And this is the cause of an awful lot of crashes. And so again, it's just sort of, file a bill to show you're doing something. Don't just stand there, sit there.
Well, what's the one? There's also one about legislation that would require parents to have some sort of re-education for driver's ed while their student takes driver's ed classes as well. I don't know.
Yeah, that's too much. Government can't do everything. It should pick a few things that it can do well.
Speaking of government doing things, the Pawtucket Red Sox.
Yeah, my view of my view on that, I think we have to ask some questions. One is the opportunity cost. What's the opportunity cost of spending all this bond money on a stadium as opposed to fixing some more bridges or roads, building a new school, building a new building at URI, creating, expanding the URI oceanography campus, whatever, with that money instead of building a stadium for a private company? I don't know. I will say that even Andrew Zimbalist, who's probably the biggest experts on stadium financing, said this is a much better deal for the state than the previous deals were. So it's good that state pushed back before, but still you get to this opportunity cost issue. You can spend the money on that instead of what? The other thing, it's all based on these assumptions that McCoy will do very well over the next 30 years. But what if the demographics change? What if the consumer habits change and fewer people go to baseball games? We know that everybody will continue to need roads, bridges, hospitals, that sort of stuff, but not baseball stadiums. So I don't think we've really fully accepted how difficult it is to project revenues from something like that. It's like from a mall. Now the malls are going out of business, but the malls were all put up with all these very optimistic projections of revenue.
Well, we'll just put a casino in there.
Well, that's what's going to, I think probably, I know Josh Frennan says, I think it's much more likely to be university there because it's so big, it's rather attractive. Great architect who designed it.
It's a big footprint, yep.
And it would actually lend itself very well to an institution such as a university.
Well,
like that.
keeping a close eye on the Paw Sox is interesting.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe
I
it was
like
just.
the Paw Sox too. I like it. I go to games, so we love to take foreigners there. They can't believe it. It's bizarre. I just don't think we're thinking this thing rigorously enough, and I think we're probably far too optimistic about the revenues and ticket sales and then repayment and everything. They could come through in 30 years. I mean, 30 years I'll be dead, and who knows what the consumer system will.
You're not 30 years. You're still going to be right here in the
yeah,
local
right,
studio.
right here,
We're going to be talking about what's happening. But let's talk about the maybe political implications of it. Obviously, I've seen a lot of sort of backlash from who we saw back in 15. As you said, it's a different deal, but Republicans still opposed, progressives still opposed, libertarians still opposed.
That's right.
So if we see something at the assembly, now here we are in 17, we're
Good
in
question,
we're in
Kate.
cycle for
I think
18.
it's probably going to go through, if I had to guess, because the Senate Majority Leader, the Senate President, Dominic Ruggiero, favors it. He loves building projects. He's a very smart guy.
Big labor guy, so we
the
had
speaker seems to be skeptical. He was burned a couple of years ago. I think that's why he's burned. And Ruggiero would come back and say it's a better deal, but again, I just get back to this opportunity cost question, which nobody's seems to be asking. What else could you do with that money?
it's
30, 40, whatever.
38. No, we do 38 million.
Right. What could you do with that money? Gee, is a stadium a better place to put the money than the road I'm looking at out the window here, which looked like the road in Lagos, Nigeria?
we should turn the camera around.
We have a crumbling Superman building. The schools, some are good, some are terrible. URI doesn't get that much money from the state. We don't have nearly enough vocational education.
So 38 million,
Yeah.
but of course their argument is it's an economic catalyst that
Well, they always say that about everything.
They always
so
say
would
that.
fixing a bridge.
But what about the argument that the collective billionaire ownership should underwrite it themselves? If it's such a good investment, go out and finance it themselves.
Well, it's a very good point, which is unanswerable. Mr. Salem is one of the partners and the esteemed Providence Equity Partners, the private equity company. He would cough in some money. Terry Murray, who to avoid taxes here lives in Florida. Tom Ryan lives in Florida to avoid taxes here. They're all involved in this thing to greater or lesser degree. So it's a big question.
So you think 30% chance of President Trump being impeached, greater than 50% chance of the POSOX proposal going through?
Yes, I'd say.
I think we should have a little, a book, Bob Whitcomb's book of odds.
Yeah, you're right.
every week.
Before the end, I think people should think about these public-private things, for stadiums. A few other things come up too, but they always seem to be for-profit stadiums. The public, and it's a little vague what they mean by the public would own the stadium. So I think the state,
yes.
Not the city. The city, I don't think, could handle that. And so this broad question of kind of whether public-private partnerships, when do they make sense, is not being adequately answered. I do admire people for at least putting some of their own money in. That's fine. But all the people are going to put a little of their money in, they have much, much more. Mr. Salem is a billionaire.
They collectively are worth
Tom
billions.
Ryan's got probably hundreds of millions. Terry Murray's probably got 100 million. So, this is like two Danish and a regular for these people.
So, last question as we wrap up here. It is May 18th, the General Assembly session.
Date that will live in infamy.
The speaker was in here in the studio earlier this week. Says he hopes to wrap up by middle of June. Is this enough time for a public, a suitable public debate, a month's time about
appraisal about the stadium?
Just the whole proposal? Yeah.
Not really. On the other hand, I hope they don't try to push it off till 11:59 p.m. on June 30th, which is what they used to do.
The speaker has promised no late nights this year. We're holding him to it.
Backroom deals in the middle of the night. Nobody knows what's going on. A lot of mischievous stuff happens. And I'm not talking just about idiotic lanes, lane rules.
Your favorite piece of legislation.
That's right. Well, there'll be a lot more.
We'll talk about it next week. So look for it in your column.
Great.
Okay. Bob Whitcomb, appreciate it. Let you round the magical corner here. Bob Whitcomb, as he does every Thursday, comes into the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center, talks a little bit about his column from the previous week, things going on right now, and what he might be writing for his next upcoming column. So check him out. Always an interesting read on Go.